They say blood can't betray you. But that night, my blood hit the marble floor, and my family raised their glasses to the man who made me bleed. Hi, my name is Sloane Wetaker. 2 months ago, I walked into a ballroom filled with laughter, champagne, and congratulations. My brother, Preston, had just taken his startup public. Everyone in that room looked at him like he walked on water. Preston Wetaker, the golden boy of tech, the pride of the Wetaker legacy. But what they didn't know was that the empire they toasted to was built on my stolen inheritance. What they didn't see was the bruise blooming across my cheek 20 minutes after the party. And what they didn't hear was the sound of my father's fist crashing into my face. While my mother sipped her wine, and Preston leaned in and whispered, "You should have just stayed quiet." But you know what? I'd been quiet for 29 years. That night, that was the last time I ever would be. I walked into that party wearing a rented dress and a fragile sense of obligation. I walked out bleeding, humiliated, and reborn. Because when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones who hurt you, and the ones who should speak up for you sell your silence to preserve their image, you learn to become your own damn hero. So if you've ever been shut down, disrespected, or told, "Don't speak up, it'll bring shame to the family," then this story is for you. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something. What was the one betrayal that hurt the most? But you forgave just because they were family. Drop it in the comments below. I rate every single one. Now take a deep breath, because this story starts with a slap across the face and ends in court, 3 frozen bank accounts, and a headline that read, "Daughter exposes family empire, destroys legacy from the inside." Let's begin. I don't know why I said yes to coming back. Maybe it was politeness. Maybe it was that strange sense of debt children sometimes carry, even when they've been hurt by the very people who were supposed to love them. Or maybe I just wanted to see if, after all these years of being invisible, they could finally look me in the eye. Preston's IPO party was held at our family estate in Lake Oswego, a place I used to call home. Now, it's nothing more than a polished shell, stuffed with memories I've spent years trying to forget. The mansion sat by the lake, silent and manicured to the point of parody. Every stone on the walkway, every perfectly trimmed hedge, looked like it had been arranged to say, "Nothing is wrong here." Just like my mother's entire life. Elegant, curated, flawless, and God forbid anyone saw the cracks underneath. The moment I stepped into the grand foyer, laughter crashed over me like a wave. Guests dressed to impress, champagne glasses in hand, all swarming around Preston like he had just won a Nobel Prize. There he stood, tall, sharp-suited, smug to the bone. A custom gray suit, a smile perfected in the mirror, and a glance so casual it passed over me like I was just the help who got lost. I wore a simple black dress, the kind you rent with a 20,000 promo code. Hair pulled back, makeup minimal, one hand clenched tightly around a worn-out clutch, my only shield between me and this entire curated circus. No one said hi. No one asked how I'd been. Every wish, every glance, every compliment belonged to the golden boy, Preston. And me, I was just Sloane, the artsy one, the offbeat one, the failure, the girl who drew those silly pictures instead of going to law school. I remember the day I told them I wanted to be an illustrator. My father laughed so hard he actually leaned back. This family breeds attorneys, not cat doodlers for children's books. My mother sipped her tea in silence, offering no defense. Just that same look, part pity, part disgust. And Preston, he just shrugged, "As long as you're not asking me for money. Knock yourself out." And now, here they were celebrating Preston's IPO, built on startup funds that came, quietly and illegally, from the trust that was meant for me. Money I didn't even know was being siphoned. Name by name, wire by wire, when I was still too young to understand the fine print. They used my money, then taught me I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table. I stood by the bar, trying to blend in. But I couldn't. No one noticed my hands trembling. No one saw the way my eyes froze watching Preston raise his glass. And no one, not a single person, knew that just minutes later, the man the world called respectable would throw a punch that landed across my face, right there, in front of all of them. But not yet. We're not there yet. Before the truth exploded, I was still just a shadow. In a family portrait I was never allowed to be part of. I stood by the bar, clutching a glass of sparkling water like if I let go, I'd fall apart. The air in the room grew heavier with every fake laugh and hollow compliment. Preston now stood at the center of the grand hall, mic in hand, his tailored suit hugging him like he was announcing a presidential run. All eyes were on him. And me, still there, still invisible. And finally, Preston smiled, scanning the room, then locked eyes with me. I'd like to thank my family. Especially my sister, Sloane, who proves that not everyone with the Whittaker name turns out successful. Laughter. Loud. Easy. Real. Not one awkward chuckle. Not one glance of discomfort. Just pure amusement at my expense. I felt my face flush. My chest tightened with every heartbeat. I've lived with their disdain before. But this was public execution. 200 people. And not a single one flinched. I took a step forward. Maybe I should have turned away. Maybe silence would have been safer. But I was done. I met his gaze, lips curled into a tight smile. Thanks, Preston. For proving that you can build a company from theft, no creativity required. Just a steady hand siphoning someone else's inheritance. Silence. Real silence. The kind that hums in your ears and makes chandeliers feel too bright. Preston blinked. Then his eyes darkened, his jaw clenched, fingers tightening around the mic. And then I heard those footsteps. Heavy, measured, angry. Edward Whittaker, my father, pushing through the crowd like a wave of heat. His face was flushed. His eyes locked on mine, like I just spat on the family crest. What did you just say? His voice low, cold, but dangerous. I opened my mouth, and his hand came down. Shirk. My head whipped sideways. My whole body lurched like I'd just been hit by a truck. Preston's mic slipped from his hand, clattering onto the marble like a gunshot. The music died. Champagne glasses still glinted in the hands of nearby guests, but no one drank, no one moved. I touched my cheek, cold, burning, and then blood. His hand grabbed a fistful of my hair, dragging me out of the hall like I was a trash bag left behind after a party. I heard gasps, heels clicking, gowns rustling, but no one stopped him. Not one hand reached out, just phones, slipping out of clutches in eerie silence. Recording, capturing, consuming, like this was part of the gala entertainment. And then I heard it, louder, soft, sharp, from my mother. A delicate, amused chuckle, like this was exactly the show she'd been hoping for. That's our girl, I heard her whisper to someone nearby. And Preston, he clapped. Slow, deliberate. You deserved that, he muttered, never even looking at me. I don't know what hurt more, the slap, or the truth that in that entire room, everyone saw it happen, and not a single soul did a thing. I don't remember how I got out of that mansion. All I know is, at some point, I was in the parking lot, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock the door of my beat-up old Toyota. The same car Preston once called. A rusted tin can that doesn't belong anywhere near our driveway. I climbed inside, slammed the door shut, and then everything crashed down. The ballroom, the clinking of glasses, my father's roar, that slap, my mother's cold stare, Preston's slow, mocking applause. It all replayed in my mind like a broken film with no stop button. I looked up at the rearview mirror. A woman stared back, swollen face, split lip, hair yanked and tangled, and eyes so red I couldn't tell if it was from rage or tears I didn't even realize I'd shed. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. It smeared across the steering wheel. That red was too vivid to be imagined. But my feelings? Completely numb. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't asking. How could he? I didn't whisper. This isn't like him. All I thought was, again. And this time, it's the last. Because it wasn't the first slap. Wasn't the first time I was told I was a failure. Wasn't the first time my mother stayed silent. Preston chose power. And I was shoved to the bottom rung of this thing they called family. But it was the first time everyone saw. And the first time I decided not to let it slide. I reached into the glove box for my phone, not to call someone for comfort, not to text anyone for help, but to document. Every bruise. My jaw. The split skin on my lip. The patch of my scalp that burned from being yanked. My eyes, red but clear. Then I opened the voice recorder, not to catch someone else's confession, but to capture my own voice, while the tremble was still real, while the memory was still raw. Before the gaslighting could begin, they hit me. In front of nearly 200 people. No one stepped in. My mother laughed. My brother clapped. And me. I'm done being silent. Then I opened Google Docs. I typed, line by line, not because I thought I'd forget, but because I needed the details locked into words. So when someone asks me one day, "Are you sure it happened like that?" I'd have proof. Not just bruises, but memory, unfiltered and untwisted. This wasn't just a bad night. It was the final verdict on a lifetime of being dismissed. I closed the phone, leaned back in the driver's seat, closed my eyes, and whispered, to no one in particular, to no one at all, "It's over. From now on, I write this story." I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I spent the whole night sitting on the living room floor, back pressed against the wall, knees tucked into my chest, my phone resting silently in my palm. The kitchen light cast a dull, amber glow across my face, old, tired, and worn out. Just like I felt. Drained, numb, but wide awake. I opened my contacts, scrolled past hundreds of meaningless names, and then I stopped. Carmen Tran. We met back in college, sociology majors. Carmen was the kind of person who, once she trusted you, would go to war for you. There was a time she couldn't pay her tuition. I lent her the money, no contract, no terms, just kindness. 10 years later, she's now a respected civil rights attorney in Seattle. Takes the cases no one else will touch. Abused spouses from powerful families. Children cheated out of their inheritance. Women silenced by their own bloodline. I wasn't even sure she'd remember me. But I hit call. 3 rings. Then her voice, slightly raspy, probably half asleep, but still Carmen calm, direct, and solid. "Sloan." My throat tightened. Only 2 words came out. "I need." She cut me off, not with panic, not with pity. "Talk to me." "I'm here." And I did. All of it. I didn't sugarcoat, didn't shrink it down. I told her about the slap. The look in my father's eyes. The party. The blood on the steering wheel. The silence from 200 people who watched and did nothing. The woman in the mirror I barely recognized. Carmen stayed silent for the entire 20 minutes, just breathing steady, like she was holding in something sharp. When I finally stopped, my throat raw, my eyes burning, she said 4 words. "I've got your back." No hesitation, no conditions, just one line that felt like a rope pulling me back from the bottom of something I hadn't even realized I was sinking into. An hour later, I made my second call. Mr. Decker. He was our old next-door neighbor in Lake Oswego. Tall, silver-haired, soft-spoken, with eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and forgotten none of it. When I was 15, I got locked out of the house on Christmas Eve for breaking a crystal wineglass. It was Mr. Decker who silently handed me a blanket and a mug of cocoa. He didn't say a word, just placed his hand gently on my shoulder like he was afraid I might shatter. I'd kept his number all these years. Never dialed it, until now. 2 rings. "Sloan?" His voice was gravelly. Not surprised, not cold. Like he'd been waiting for this call. I didn't need to explain much. I need to find everything my father's hidden. The trust fund, the accounts. All of it. He sighed, then chuckled softly, the kind of laugh you only earn after decades of witnessing people lie with perfect posture. "Where do we start?" he asked. I glanced at my phone, glowing on the charger. 1:43 a.m., and I said, slowly, each word like a blade carving into the night, "Start with the trust fund." And the day he told me, "You should be grateful we fed you and paid for school." And just like that, the war began. Not with bullets, but with documents, with evidence, with a memory that refused to fade. 3 days after that call, I drove to Mr. Decker's ground floor apartment, the same place he'd lived for over 20 years, tucked beneath a canopy of aging pine trees on the southern edge of Lake Oswego. The apartment hadn't changed. Orderly, precise, not a single object out of place. On the oak coffee table sat a mug of pitch, black coffee, and a half-used ashtray. And in the center of the table, a thick manila folder. It looked like it had been waiting for me for a long time. Decker didn't say a word when I walked in, just gave a nod and slid the folder across the table. "You should sit down." I sat. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something colder. A chill that came not from the air, but from memory. Some part of me had always known something wasn't right. I opened the folder. The first page, a copy of the trust account my father had set up when I was 10, with the promise that by 25, I could use it to build a life worthy of the Whittaker name. But the numbers didn't match. Withdrawals, wire transfers to unfamiliar corporations, large deductions dating all the way back to when I was 16. I kept flipping. Decker had marked each transaction in red. Funds transferred from an account under my name to companies like Everwind Holdings, Maverick Systems, and Whittaker Tech Investments LLC. The names, so familiar it made my stomach turn. His voice broke the silence, low and brittle, like old wood cracking in the cold. They're all shell companies. And the man behind them is Preston. I looked up at him, half in disbelief, half in recognition. You're saying, less. Your brother built his startup using your trust fund. They started siphoning it when you were too young to even access the account. And they've been doing it ever since. I sat frozen. No tears, no hyperventilating, just emptiness, blank white static. Preston's brilliant startup, the glowing IPO party, the speech where he called me a disappointment. All of it built on my money. I remembered a half-forgotten moment. I was 19. I asked my father for $5,000 to change my major. He told me money doesn't grow on trees. You should be grateful you have clothes on your back. That same year, Preston opened his first office in downtown Portland, and I'd baked him a cake to celebrate. From scratch, I whispered, barely audible, he built a legacy on my silence. Decker nodded. And now it's time you break it. I closed the folder, held it like a verdict. Not just evidence, but a piece of my stolen past finally returned to my hands. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, snapped a photo of the page that read from Trust, Sloan Whittaker to Maverick Systems, date 06017, my 16th year. Then I sent it to Carmen, with one line, "We have the weapon. Now let's go to war." The penthouse sat on the 38th floor of a glass tower in downtown Portland. A single night here could cover 3 months of my rent. My mother said she chose the place for privacy, but I knew better. She chose it for the lighting. Perfect for a family reunion photo shoot that could save their image once the scandal broke. I arrived 2 minutes early. No makeup, no jewelry, not even a coat. Just a white button-up shirt, black jeans, and my worn leather boots. I wanted them to see it clearly. I didn't come here to bow. The elevator opened directly into the living room. Polished wood floors, Italian leather sofas, and floor-to-ceiling glass windows that bathed the room in warm afternoon light, a beautiful glow for a toxic gathering. Edward Whittaker, my father, was already seated, expressionless, a whiskey glass in his hand, the ice still half frozen. Preston sat beside him, legs crossed, his phone flipped face, down like he was fully present, which only made the performance more ridiculous. My mother stood by the tea tray, stirring a pot of Earl Grey like we were about to discuss drapes. No one asked how I was. No one mentioned the party. Not a single word of apology. My father broke the silence first. "We don't want this to escalate. Family is family. Let's handle this quietly." My mother walked over and placed a leather-bound folder in front of me. Her tone sweet, like she was offering cookies. $500,000. Wired immediately after you sign. I opened it. An NDA, non-disclosure agreement, no lawsuits, no inheritance claims, and most importantly, a strict clause forbidding the release of any images, content, or documents related to the unfortunate incident at the party on. I let out a dry laugh. There was nothing funny about it, but the absurdity begged for air. So this is the price for blood, for dignity, for the years you stole from me. Not bad. My mother tilted her head, voice dripping with condescension. Don't exaggerate, Sloan. Everyone loses control sometimes. You caused a scene. People saw it. I raised an eyebrow. Funny. I remember Dad punching me at a party. Not sure how that turned into me causing a scene. Preston jumped in with a yawn, like the meeting was cutting into his nap time. You're just looking for attention. If you needed money, you could have just asked. No need for a social justice performance. I closed the folder. Didn't sign. Then my eyes landed on the porcelain tea caddy sitting off to the right, a faint green light. Tiny. But unmistakable, I'd seen that before. Oh, you're recording this. Silence. But the kind that answers everything. This time I laughed for real, loud. Sharp. Cold. My blood isn't even dry, and you're already staging your next narrative. A hush contract. A doctored recording. What is this TMZ? I turned to face my father. This isn't a negotiation. This is goodbye. I pushed the folder back toward them. Keep your money. My pain's not that cheap. Then I stood. No dramatic pause. No final stare. I just walked. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt something lift, not because I'd won, but because, for the first time in my life, I didn't back down. 3 days after the penthouse meeting, I found myself at a quiet little cafe along the Willamette River, the kind of place journalists choose for off-the-record conversations, where every camera stays tucked away and every meeting begins with a handshake and ends with a single line, "Nothing's being recorded." Right? I arrived early, ordered a latte I didn't plan to drink. The name, Sloan, scribbled messily on the cup made me chuckle. Not because it was funny, but because it reminded me that at least something still got my name right. 15 minutes later, Lana Kim walked in. She didn't look like the TV journalists you'd expect. No tight dresses, no heavy makeup. Just a long wine-colored coat, a worn notebook, a discreetly hidden recorder, and eyes sharp enough to cut through the most polished Fast 80s. Eyes that didn't just look at you, but through you. I'd followed her work for years. Stories about women robbed of inheritance, fathers who weaponized protection to control their grown daughters, and children who carried their names on paper but had no power to touch what was rightfully theirs. Sloan Whitaker, she greeted, shaking my hand. Didn't expect to hear that name outside the Whitaker shareholder list. I let out a dry laugh. Trust me, I didn't even know I was a shareholder until last month. I handed her a USB, along with a gray envelope clipped neatly with printed documents, evidence, bank statements, wire histories, shell company names, withdrawals from the trust, photos of the bruises, and a short video clip from an anonymous guest, capturing the moment my father slapped me across the face, to the sound of mocking applause. Lana flipped through each page, nodding. No gasps, no probing questions. Just quiet focus, like every word she read was a puzzle piece she'd been searching for years. After nearly 10 minutes of silence, she finally spoke. "I'll write it, but I need to know. Do you want to go public?" I leaned back, eyes drifting out the window. People passed by, ordinary, oblivious, loud. That's how I'd lived, moving through crowds, unseen, unheard, and no one cared enough to ask. I turned back to her, voice steady, gaze sharp. I want to stay anonymous. For now, I just need some space to breathe. But if they retaliate, if they go to the press, twist the story, play dirty, I'll come forward. All of it. Lana nodded slowly. I understand. But once this goes out, there's no walking it back. I shrugged. I haven't had a way back since I got hit in front of 200 people. She smiled faintly, closed her notebook. I'll send you a draft before we go live. I nodded, then stood. The lat still untouched. As I stepped out of the cafe, the river breeze caught my coat, cold, but sobering. I didn't know exactly what I'd face next. But one thing was clear. I just laid the first brick to shatter the perfectly polished shell the Whitaker family built to hide their cruelty. 3 days after I walked out of that cafe with Lana, the article dropped. No drama, no clickbait, just clear, surgical precision, like a scalpel cutting through polished skin, the stolen legacy. When a daughter's silence became the launchpad for a family empire. I thought I was ready. I thought I had prepared for this. But my breath still caught when I saw it splashed across the front page of Portland Tribune's investigative column. A blurred image of the manila folder I'd handed over, and beneath the headline, a quote from me. I'm no longer afraid of being cut off from my family, because they never truly let me belong in the first place. Shares exploded. Legal blogs started dissecting the case. Social media split down the middle, some calling me a spoiled rich girl airing dirty laundry, others whispering, finally, someone said it. I had barely exhaled when it hit me. A video clip surfaced from an anonymous Twitter account, then spread like wildfire to TikTok and Instagram. It was real footage, but edited with surgical intent. In the video, I appear to storm forward, my voice raised, eyes flaring with rage. My father, Edward, appears calm, even lowering his hand slightly, as if to gently de-escalate the situation. No slap, no hair, pulling, no mother laughing, no Preston applauding. All of that erased. Instead, it shows me trembling, gasping, cut to just after I spoke up against Preston, spliced perfectly to make me look unhinged. Caption: Rich family drama. The artist's sister snaps at IPO celebration. I threw my phone onto the couch. My throat tightened. My body went cold, like someone had poured ice water straight into my spine. My email pinged. The subject line hit like a blade: legal notice, slander and defamation complaint, Whitaker and Wells Law. I opened it. A formal legal complaint, filed on behalf of Edward Whitaker, alleging defamation, emotional distress, reputational harm to the Whitaker name, and financial damage to Preston. Claim damages $2.5 million. I read the final line 3 times over. Your client's false statements have caused irreparable harm. We demand an immediate retraction, a public apology, and a cease and desist of any further defamatory narrative. Sainted Stanton Wells-esque. The name sliced through me like a wire-pulled taut. Stanton Wells, the media shark, the same man who flipped a sexual harassment case by airing a reconstructed clip that painted the victim as a fame-hungry manipulator, the one who staged a weepy, televised redemption speech for a CEO caught embezzling millions, and got him back into the boardroom in 6 months. Edward wasn't just retaliating. He'd hired the best to bury me. Carmen called within 5 minutes. Her voice fast, clipped, urgency wrapped in steel. They're firing back. Fake clips, heavy hitter lawyers. But don't panic. We've got the originals, the statements, the transfers, and a video no one's seen yet. I laughed weakly, one hand clutched to my forehead. They're trying to kill me. Using the same silence that once kept me alive. Carmen paused, just for a moment, then said, slower, deliberate, then this time. Sloan, we'll let the noise save you. I looked at my phone screen. The fake video had crossed 1 million views. And in that moment, I knew the real battle had just begun. Multnomah County Courthouse. Monday morning. A light drizzle dusted my coat, cold and sharp. But it didn't make me flinch. Not today. I climbed the granite steps in a gray trench coat, chin held high. Beside me, Carmen Tran walked with her hair pulled back, a long overcoat draped over a black suit, her hand gripping a thick folder, like a weapon forged over weeks of battle. Behind us was Mr. Decker. Gray shirt, worn blazer, his eyes, sharp as a blade wiped clean of dust. He didn't speak, just gave a small nod whenever I looked back. A nod that felt like someone had finally shown up to carry the part of my life I'd always held alone. Inside the courtroom, Edward Whitaker was already seated. Next to him, Stanton Wells, a man who looked like a shark dressed in Hugo Boss. His expression calm, almost bored, as if the verdict had already been written. Preston was there too, fidgeting, avoiding my eyes, tapping one finger against his silenced phone, trying to trap his nerves in rhythm. The hearing began. The judge was a Latina woman, stern, composed, razor-sharp. She scanned the room like a scale waiting for the first weight to tip. Stanton stood first. His voice rang loud, rehearsed. Your Honor, my client has been subjected to public humiliation. His reputation tarnished, family disrupted, business gravely affected by unsubstantiated allegations, spread recklessly by media without verification. We are seeking damages for slander and deliberate defamation. Carmen didn't flinch. She stood, unfolded her file, voice low and steady, sharp as cut glass. Your Honor, I present a copy of Sloan Whitaker's trust fund, showing unauthorized withdrawals beginning at age 16, wire transfers to shell companies under the control of Preston Whitaker, and a notarized affidavit from Mr. Russell Decker, who independently verified all documents provided. She placed each file on the stand like dropping stones into still water. Every drop echoed with weight. And finally, Your Honor, we submit original video footage, filmed by a guest at the IPO party. This recording is unedited, uncut, and will show the truth behind the so-called outburst of Ms. Whitaker. The judge nodded. The video began to play. The courtroom fell silent, soft background music, Preston's mocking voice, then Edward Whittaker stepping forward and slapping me across the face. Undeniable, uncut, unedited. A gasp escaped from one of the reporters in the back. Preston's face turned pale. He stood up, whispered something to his lawyer, and walked out of the courtroom. No one stopped him. Edward sat frozen, no longer the legendary attorney, just an aging man with sunken eyes and trembling, veined hands. The judge adjusted her glasses, nodding to Carmen. Evidence received. The next session will evaluate the legality of the trust and the countersuit request. Then she turned to Stanton. And I suggest you prepare thoroughly for rebuttal, because what we've seen today carries weight. The hearing adjourned. Outside, the press swarmed like bees around a broken hive. I walked slowly down the hallway. The fluorescent lights overhead made the tiled floor feel colder than ever. Carmen leaned close, whispering, "They thought you were the daughter who'd stay silent forever." I didn't answer. I just kept walking, back straight, step steady. For the first time in my life, I walked out of a room without my head down. The news broke on Thursday morning, before the sun had a chance to pierce through the gray skies of Portland. I was making coffee in my tiny kitchen when my phone began buzzing like an alarm. I picked it up, and there it was. Plastered everywhere: Forbes, CNN Local, Portland Tribune, The Verge, same story, same face. Same name I once believed would never make headlines, from victim to whistleblower. Sloan Whittaker exposes the dark side of an $80 million tech empire. The article was a culmination of everything from the past 3 weeks. The courtroom hearing, the undeniable evidence, the uncut footage. It even featured commentary from legal experts, and one line that made me reread it 3 times. In an age where power often hides behind boardroom doors, one woman stepped out from the shadow of her own family to light a flame of justice. Her name is Sloan Whittaker. I sat down at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, eyes staring through the window. For the first time in years, there was nothing left to fear. No ghosts pressing against my chest, no blocked calls, no mother's disdainful glare or Preston's smug smirk every time I walked into a room. Just silence, peace, and myself. A few days later, I agreed to a local TV interview. The host looked at me and asked, "What do you think gave you the strength to do this?" I looked straight into the camera. No flinching, no playing the victim, and I said, "I'm not the broken daughter. I'm the woman who rebuilt herself from the scars they left behind." No applause in the studio. None was needed. That line wasn't meant to be clapped for. It just needed to be said, clearly, firmly. A final period on a chapter buried too long in silence. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment, opened an old drawer, reached for something I hadn't touched in 12 years. A thin silver necklace with a tiny leaf charm. My mother gave it to me on my 17th birthday, then ripped it off my neck during an argument, calling it unfit for a girl who couldn't keep her mouth shut. I held it gently, untangled the knots, and put it on again. It rested against my collarbone, not as a symbol of maternal love, but as a reminder I survived. And I reclaimed the right to tell my story. I looked at myself in the mirror, not to check my appearance, but to meet my own eyes. Still mine, but no longer trembling. Not the girl begging for a place in her own family, but the woman who rewrote her last name on the ruins they left behind. I stepped out onto the balcony. No rain, no sun, just a soft breeze. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Some wounds don't bleed. They don't show on your skin. They don't need stitches. And yet they take a lifetime to heal. I spent nearly 30 years inside a family that had everything: wealth, reputation, a flawless facade, but lacked the one thing I needed most: the safety to be myself. I used to think silence was how you kept the peace, that if I just held back a little longer, endured a little more, maybe I'd be loved. Or at the very least, accepted. But the truth is this: silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the shackle they use to keep you small, so you won't ruin the image they built, so you won't make them look bad, so you won't become the truth they fear. They'll tell you, don't make a scene. They'll remind you, every family has issues. They'll preach, a good child knows how to stay quiet. But you know what? No one has the right to price your silence. No one has the right to use family as the excuse to break your wings inside your own nest. And no one has the right to take your voice, especially when it's the only thing that helped you survive the pain. I'm not telling this story to gain sympathy. I'm telling it because somewhere, someone is living a version of my life and wondering if they're allowed to speak up. The answer is yes. Not because you have to burn the world down, but because you deserve to live authentically, fearlessly, unapologetically. If you've ever been silenced by the very people who were supposed to protect you, remember this: healing begins the moment you choose your voice over their comfort. You are not selfish for walking away from what was breaking you. You are not cruel for exposing what hurt you, even if it means facing those who share your blood, and you are not wrong for choosing yourself. If you've ever had to walk away from the people everyone else called family, leave a comment below. You don't need to explain. Just type, "I've been there." I'll read every word. And if you're still in the middle of the pain, I hope this story reminds you, you are not alone, you are not invisible, and you still belong, especially to yourself.